What?
Senate Education Committee, April 25th. We just had a hearing in which we listened to students from around Vermont with comments on the work that with which we're engaged. Now we're switching back to the draft.
No.
No, I'll cut 4 in from you. I'm sorry. I did send it. I don't know what's going on. 4.1 that we had in purpose yesterday on page 454. And the idea today is to actually do kind of a section by section markup. So that we were able to do that and move things along, given the very short time frame that window of time that we're operating at this point. So with that, we'll have Beth introduce herself for the record.
Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel.
Okay. And we're on section 1.
Do you want me to share my screen or do you want to just, I have zero preference.
Then why don't we share screen just in case people watching, so I can.
Okay, so this is draft 4.1 of the Senate's proposal of amendment to H 454 as passed by the House. And there have been no changes in this language that we're going to look at today since yesterday.
So what I'd like to do is go through or have people, I guess the question is, where in section 1 do people have things? I'd like to check off sections to the extent we can, or make language changes that people might be looking for. And I've got a couple of things more to know. So I'll do one. If we look to page 2. Lines 10 and 11. And I will say that I have a couple minutes with Senator Ron Hinsdale. We just looked at that raising teacher stuff. Remember that little discussion about raising teacher salaries yesterday, and just thought it might make sense to put a period after the word after raising teacher salaries. That's what we're trying to do. Put raising teacher salaries. That makes sense to people.
I mean, do you want to say anything? I think the rest is a bit patronizing. I don't think that's what was intended, but you don't have to have a higher salary to be high quality, and teachers are professionals. I feel like the rest is like a little bit too. Yeah.
So, and again, this is then you go down to line
Which you want me to go to?
14 and 15. And Senator, so you raised this issue.
Yeah, and I think Senator Hishy brought it up later, so I feel like we should be weaving back in this notion that school district consolidation on its own is not, I just heard that in this hearing, not a value, that if it's to what end is what I wrote, like savings and student outcomes, so enact legislation that creates that enables school district consolidation where savings and student outcomes would be achieved. Yeah.
Yes, my question is, are districts prohibited currently from voluntarily consolidating with another district?
Is that a question to me or?
Well, I guess to anybody who knows the answer.
No.
So I'm not sure why we even need 14 or 15 in there to begin with. So that's my take on it.
And okay, and they're saying it is interesting that it's all about what we're going to do in 2026, which is weird to me. I don't know. We usually don't say like next year we're going to do this.
Well, there is a whole section about with the treatment house percent looking at maps and trying to bring forward a map.
Is that in this section?
It's not in this section, but this it probably relates to this language in some fashion. So,
I guess it's just that, like, I'm channeling Senator Sears again. Session law about our intent, if we don't feel really good about it, we don't need it. It doesn't, unless we're asking for a study or we say we're gonna come back and do something, it's not necessary. I guess if to help it stand alone, like without anyone explaining it, if people were reading it, you could do some of these, but I mean, we're saying when, like, it's spelling out the timeline.
I'm sorry, I thought we were still on just.
Oh, yeah.
14, 15 still.
I guess I'm on all of section 2.
Okay,
So all of section 2 is what we say we're going to do next year. If we don't endorse every single line of what we say we're going to do next year, it doesn't change anything. If we don't have a section on what we plan to do next year, which for me has not been common in the language I've looked at in my career.
I don't see the need for the session at all. Yes, ma'am.
The entirety of section 1.
Section 2. We have
Starting, page 2, line 12. That's section 2.
so we said two.
Yeah,
So two.
the intent in 2026. That is a new tool that I
So you're suggesting that we delete, starting on line 12,
Mhm.
page 2.
Yeah.
Through
Bottom of page 3.
bottom of page 3.
Yeah.
Unless this is a tool that you've seen before and it's been effective.
No. And in fact, when last year, when there was an effort to say we're going to tax higher incomes, and it's our intent to use it for housing next year, I was very opposed to that because it was going to be the course of a new biennium, and we don't do that. We don't tie the hands of the future legislature. So this to me is not a tool I want to see used more often, to just say, like, we didn't get to some of this stuff we wanted to, so it's our intent to get to it next year. We either do or we don't.
It's kind of like a to-do list that
Right.
if it makes the priority, we do it.
Okay, then I think it sounds like there's a consensus to cross out starting on line 12 of page 2 all the way through page 3. Right one for brevity. Okay. And then we have all of the language, most of which came from the House, on the Commission on the Future of Public Education and the reports.
I just want to ask, the students said that they wish there was more permanent representation in different arenas. Is there not a youth member of this commission?
There isn't.
But there were also ending them.
The commission's also not long for the world.
Right, okay.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna hear from the commission at any point? I still don't think we heard from them the whole session.
We
Actually
actually
got the report.
got the report.
Yeah, it's on the website.
They had a charge, and that was the amount of the report. So.
The only thing that they might want to comment on is the change in date, I imagine, right?
Sooner, also been discussed.
Sure, yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that really changed it.
Okay, so it looks like we just keep going on until we get to, section 3.
Yeah, if I can.
Yeah.
Just pause just for a second. So I just made a note to myself to review this section to see if there's any elements to actually retain. because, you know, for example, the one that got my attention was page 11, line 17. Like the private therapeutic schools. If we don't, it's this body, this commission, they have some great value in proposing some analysis that we don't have in some other study or some other product being delivered. Where they want to actually utilize this, you know, rather talented group to do something that can support the transition, the transformation. It's just an example.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure that I'm just not completely wed to scratching the whole section because I think might.
So you want to look through?
I'd like to look through it because
Okay.
there could be some things those, you know, that group can help us with.
And a lot of it may be, and it's also in the report because I was in charge of it. So.
Just don't know if it's the right route to do that.
I'm
I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's the right group, the
Yeah.
right topic. I'm saying it's a
Is there
group.
some- Yeah.
And is there a topic?
Mhm.
And, you know, come Tuesday, maybe, you know, all was agree that we strike it.
That's fair. I was on page 10 with my, with one of my concerns that if everyone should have a voice, or we could recommend on whatever it looks like for communities to have a voice in school closures, I don't think it should just be an elementary school.
Oh,
I think
yes.
that predetermines some kind of outcome,
So I think
including
we could
process for
simply
community.
cross out certified elementary school.
Right.
So putting a process for the community to have a voice in decisions regarding school closures. Yeah. Yep.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's fine. This is all a policy decision. I would just note that the term community, when we're thinking about schools, is ambiguous.
Mhm.
And what I believe was intended here was that served by language was meant to tie the community to the school and not just the entire school district in which a school is located in. But that is for the language in the draft as is. You all are certainly entitled to take a different policy approach. I just wanted to point out kind of that's what that served by is meant to.
I'll go out on a limb and say, I think this was put in because of class size minimums. And if we took the whole thing out, because we're not doing class size minimums, people wouldn't get it.
I don't think that's why it was put in.
Okay, why was it put in?
I think you should ask your colleagues in the House. I'm not sure that I can speak.
But I think it was a floor amendment.
Yes, and that floor amendment was sponsored.
Okay.
I actually think we could, I understand the point about the served by, but since this is, you know, what's going to be looked at, I actually think it looks okay to say, through the process for the community to have a voice of them, or the community is served.
For communities to have a voice.
So, I don't know. I think I'd be okay with it. We got rid of served by an elementary school.
Yeah.
On to section 3.
So, I mean, the only thing I wonder about on page 15, having not heard from the commission lately, is if they have already made like plans for hearings in September or something. Because that's when school starts, and like August 1st was a little harsh because no one's here in June and July. So if they're gonna wrap anything up, that's kind of like slamming the door on their way out. Maybe like September 31st or something.
You want to go with that? I'm fine. I don't think this is critical.
Okay.
You'd like that date changed to September 31st? I think it's September 30th, right?
Oh, thank you. I'm not good with dates. On a day that doesn't exist.
So that would mean you'd need to change their cessation date. Right now it's August 15th.
So October 15th.
Yes. Yes, this first Monday, yep.
In section 3, I wrote cost savings. And I think that's where Senator Hashim brought it up too. Like the whole point of school district boundary changes was supposed to be cost savings and student opportunities.
Yes, those, I'm so glad you said that, because yes, those two things. Let's look at this.
I don't even know, but I read the section and I didn't see anything about cost savings.
Well, we do have on page 17, which I'll go again more, line 17. We have increased access to excellent option educational opportunities for all students. So there's part of what we're looking for, right?
Yeah,
I think that's the primary.
And,
right.
If we wanted to, is it really savings or is it efficiency? Which word is it?
Say efficiency and possible cost savings, but efficiency. Educational opportunities and efficiencies are fine.
For the purpose of the, we want to do a new B and then read letter accordingly. B that would be down on line 19, or they want that would say something to the effect of gain efficiencies and possible cost savings. And that the figure that's it.
Maybe without sacrificing quality.
Yeah, no, that follows the line right above.
Mm-hmm.
Increase access to excellent.
Right, but
I don't mind saying that, by the way.
yeah, I just
Gain efficiencies and possible cost savings without.
better gain something from doing this. I guess is my point in this section.
Savings without, harming,
Sacrificing,
or harming those opportunities.
right? Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think what we heard today and what I've heard over and over again is people don't want to lose a sense of community. They don't, they don't want a 3-county district, let's say, but they don't want a district that means, they don't feel like they have access to their superintendent, or they, have to travel extremely far, or not know who's on the school board, or just not be connected to the community.
Well, without harming opportunities and connection to community, something like that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, are you trying to do this all in one thought?
A new B, gain efficiencies and possible cost savings without harming opportunities and connection to community.
Or that could remain be A still, increase access to excellent.
I liked that. One
Yeah,
being up there.
you like it.
That's the beginning. That's
Okay.
the starting point, right? That's what we're really trying to do. So I like that. Except then we would re-letter.
Or, I'm sorry, sense of community? Is that what you?
Connection to it.
Connection to community. And that then actually works really well, because the old B, which will now become C, is where we say maximize opportunities
Mhm.
for modern local elementary schools, central middle schools, and regional high schools.
I circled modern because I didn't know what that meant.
No,
Yeah, if we're maximizing opportunities, we don't need the word.
Yeah, Vermont doesn't like pride itself on being modern.
Okay.
That would do.
We'll just say maximize opportunities for local elementary. Well, what does that mean? For local, maximize opportunities for local elementary schools. What do we really mean?
so it looks like what the point is you have local elementary schools,
Right.
centralized middle schools, and regional. That's the real essence.
Yeah.
It's a progression.
Right. Create a system of local elementary schools, central. Like, the point is to emphasize that those 3 pieces of the puzzle
So it's a maximize, we could say maximize opportunities to support.
To support local, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. On page 18, I circled not separate towns within school districts. E5.
Oh,
I don't even know exactly what that means.
I think the point of this wasn't, and I think it was to not break up existing districts
Right.
and not to pull one town out of that, make something else work because we're all using that with districts.
Okay.
It's a worthy goal. It says to the extent
Yeah, it's just
doesn't bind your hands. It's just consideration.
Okay.
Worthy.
Yeah, it's fine.
so I have one, oh, not her, I'm sorry.
Are we done with E?
Wherever you want to be.
Okay. Well, before we move on to F, I wanted to just go back to the membership of this. It still perplexed as to why we're considering that 6 legislators on this subcommittee is necessarily the best idea when we spent, the first 2 months spinning our own wheels, trying to build maps on this committee.
I don't know what's, my thoughts about it are that we hadn't quite, that point, we hadn't quite decided how we were approaching this. So there was some, really now we're getting in charge. Legislators do this all the time. We'd be taking a lot of people who do honest would be journalists, they'd be taking a lot of testimony. And then we'd have built in what we got here, 6 legislators who would be sort of bringing that process into the legislature and not having it be like the reapportionment, whole reapportionment committee that spends a year and a lot of money doing all this. People go, start over. We'd have some institutionalized approach to this. My own view. My own view is it's our responsibility. It's just a legislative passing. And we should go, we take all the testimony, we take a lot of testimony. We, meaning whoever it is, take a lot of testimony and do what legislators do. Get this job done. I think we can. My own view, this is my view, but my view is we get a lot further. And it's also our job.
I mean, I had the strongest feelings against map making and spinning our wheels during session, because I was extremely worried about not being well resourced and well staffed to do this, to have, not as much focused time in committee and to be on a separate page than the House, because we'd have to agree on the map then. So beyond that it's 3 of each, it doesn't bother me because that feels easier to schedule.
I mean, do we think that there will be sufficient coverage of the entire state with 6 members?
Well, fair question. I'll go back out there to see what I have. 14 for each body per person. And I was
No, it's a fair.
but I say,
I don't have any suggestions for edits at the moment, but just thoughts that I have. That's all.
I have one of 19.
Going back to this section, I'm not sure the right approach, to be perfectly transparent. I think we need to come back to it. It just needs a little time to kind of, once we commit to this or another method, it's it's all kinds of repercussions.
Mm-hmm.
And it needs to, anyway, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to set this one in stone. But I recognize we have to sooner.
Yep. Okay. Page 19, this is minor, but we talked about this yesterday. Line 6 on page 19. The are delivered at a cost that parents, voters, and taxpayers value. It's kind of like not saying what we really mean, which I think is count for. On page 19, line
Okay,
6. And, you know, it's just sort of like speak as opposed to. Yeah. Theoretically, we're doing that now, whatever we pass budgets, we're doing it at levels of voters. Happy, I guess, whatever. And yes,
At the top of page 19, line 1, provide substantially equal educational opportunities. We run into an issue there because the entire concept that, an equal education isn't necessarily what every kid needs. There's some kids with more needs. And so getting something that's equal to somebody else is part of the problem. We want to change the word equal or just
for what my own view is, I'd like whenever we can, just to say excellent educational opportunities for all kids from everyone to. That's, which is equalizing pie.
Well, A or E, I'm not sure which one does what, but one of them has to ensure that the boundaries that are created allow people to raise relatively the same amount of money. That we do better somehow. And I put property wealth on page 21, but one of these has to maintain that the districts don't recreate inequity.
Fair, I mean, that's a fair point. We should, however, remember that with the foundation formula, everybody gets the same.
Well, I have problems with the 10% supplement.
Well, yeah, okay, so you're talking about that in particular, which is legitimate. So the substantially equal is the Brigham language, right? And probably why that's there. So on one level, we want to make sure we're comporting with the requirements of Brigham. And then that's why it's kind of, I don't know if the right word is balanced by B, but it's next to B, which talks about when we say that, what we really need is excellent educational opportunities for all Vermont, for every Vermont student. That's the goal, right? So we had circled that. I don't know if you want to talk about it today or later, but on line 14.
On page 19?
Yeah. JFO. If you haven't had that discussion yet, that's okay.
The assistance for this task force is going to depend, in my opinion, on the makeup of the task force itself, right? And the goal of the task force. I borrowed the language on lines 14 and 16 from what I understand was a very successful use of a facilitator or mediator in a summer task force a few years ago. But when I borrowed that language, I flagged that depending on the contractor hired and the scope of work for that contractor, JFO may not be the appropriate person to manage that contract. I think you all need to figure out what, if you want a contractor of any sort, that's first step. And then what that person would be doing or persons would be doing. And then we can build language around who's responsible for contracting for that person and the type of support or the scope of work that person would provide. But I don't know that I have heard any clear direction from you all on even whether you want a contractor.
We have Julia Richter is here from JFO. If either of you have, from your experience, and you're comfortable doing it, giving us some advice of that contractor in this instance.
I will
honest for history with
I will obviously defer to Julia for anything from JFO's point of view. From my point of view, you all, my suggestion to you all is you need to figure out what contractors can be extremely helpful, but you need to figure out what they would be used for, what the scope of their work is, the qualifications they would be, but you also need to figure out who is the membership of the task force, right? Because if you have a bunch of subject matter experts on the task force, you may not need a subject matter expert contractor. If you have no subject matter experts on the task force, maybe you need an education policy contractor. I don't know. This is all policy. And the use of contractors is going to be most effective when you all are clear on what you want out of that contractor.
I guess I would argue the opposite, which is we don't know what the group of whoever will want, and can we make it as general as possible so that we don't have to try and figure out right now how they would use the money.
I think that's a policy choice, but if you all want to be up and running by July 15th, it takes time to put an RFP and to find someone and go through that process. So you may not even have a contractor in place until September. Right? So this is all policy.
Yeah, I will say that
I think that could be true anyway.
I haven't figured out why we need a contractor. We have these services we're working on these, working on to produce a map. Got 251 logs.
I think the language that I borrowed from was specific to facilitation and mediation, which is almost like a project manager to keep everyone on task and facilitate conversations in the work of the group. Whether or not you feel that is appropriate or helpful is a policy choice.
Okay,
I actually think that with legislators, I would say, I don't think you can.
I mean, I'm looking at page 19, line 14, where you said it shouldn't be joint fiscal, it needs to be like, legislative operations. And anyway, that's the less important part of what I'm about to say, which is it says they may also retain the services of one or more independent third parties to provide facilitation and mediation services. We could be less specific about facilitation and mediation and have an appropriation. And then I don't know why we have to say we're hiring a consultant.
That is a consultant that may hire one or more third parties.
But we could leave that language or even make that language more general. And then we need the $50,000, but could we appropriate that to entity to carry out the
Yes.
work of this subsection?
Yes.
So we could, because we have that 50,000 number on page 22. And where it's appropriated to, is still open for discussion. Thoughts that you.
Sure. Julia Richter, Joint Fiscal Office. One thing that I think, in addition to everything that Beth has said, that's helpful to flag is dependent on the consultant or consultants hired, that will impact the amount of dollars necessary for the appropriation, right? So the 50,000 is what's currently included in the bill. Is the 50,000 the right number? I'm not ready to speak to that. If you are talking about hiring a consultant to do all of the mapping and do all of the facilitation and do all of the, I don't even know what, that's a different question than if you are hiring a consultant solely for the facilitation of 12 meetings. The other piece of that is when making an appropriation, that appropriation is for a specific purpose.
Mhm.
Right, so if it is an appropriation of $50,000 to, as currently drafted, the joint fiscal office. For what, right? For the contracting of consultants. So I think the question is what are these consultants going to do will help inform how many dollars you are asking the Senate Appropriations Committee to find in the budget.
Yeah, the facilitate, okay, now I am worried about the facilitation because we won't have
Staff person.
a will.
You will.
Yeah, that's
You'll
what-
have legislative operations. When I think of facilitation and mediation, I'm thinking of a project manager. And that is way more than your committee assistants provide, right?
But so I still don't know what we have available to us from GIS. Like, are they, when it says we have their administrative, technical, and legal assistance, you're still saying we would need someone to be, I don't,
But she's not saying anything. She
Okay.
that just put this in there as a
Yeah.
placeholder so that she made sure we had the discussion.
but do we know that we are asking for them to be our map people consistent?
No.
Okay.
May I provide some context into the facilitator mediate? So as Beth mentioned, this is language taken from the Renewable Energy Standard Working Group, which I staffed. So that was a couple of summers ago, and JFO contracted with, to Beth's point, facilitator, mediator, who worked to manage the conversation, plan agendas, figure out what was going on, because it was, I'm not going to say the intent, but it was a topic where they were trying to have an end product, and the General Assembly determined that hiring a facilitator to help mediate that working group would be a good use of the funds. So that's the background
And
and
that,
product of this language.
that working group was largely, I don't know if that would be it or not, but they were effectively volunteers.
No, it was legislators, utilities folks, and renewable energy folks.
Makes it, okay.
And you think facilitation and mediation is better language than project management?
I'm not a lawyer. I don't work
I
in.
think these are policy questions for you all. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah.
Other than I think you all need to figure out what you want to
I
do.
mean, I don't think we need a mediator. I think we need someone to keep working in between our meetings. So if that's a project manager, that's a project manager.
I
Well,
think it depends on what that work is between the meetings, right? I am not an education policy expert. I cannot guide you in policy decisions. If you feel that the task force is going to get all of the policy guidance it needs from the witnesses it would hear from in the regular legislative process, great. If you don't think that, then one option would be some sort of consultant with an expertise in education policy or who has experience in school district consolidation. If for some reason you consult with VCGI, and I have not heard testimony that they are willing and able to do the work of this task force, but let's say that they can't, or you decide it's not them, you would need someone who can draw you maps, and I don't know who that person would be, right? I can provide legal advice to the extent that it is in Title 16, the Constitution, federal law, or the US Constitution. But if it's a policy question, I'm not going to be able to provide that. And maybe that's totally fine because you have great partners in the field who would be coming in and testifying and helping you work through those. I don't know. That's why I'm saying this is.
Well, I had written AOE down because I wasn't sure why they weren't in here.
I think it makes sense that part of the executive and us coming around. So I think we will have AOE. We'll just have to talk, ask AOE. I think we'll have them.
Are you concerned about who this task force is accessing or who this task force is composed of?
And who's going to provide support?
Who's like forced to help us? Which if by naming ADS BCGI, they still don't need to help us make maps, then I don't really know how to answer the question right now because I'm not sure what subsection E is doing. If not helping us with the end product. And I would see in E, they like if we had an appropriation, if we listed out who we need the assistance of and they needed money to do that assistance, that would be where the appropriation goes through JFO or whomever. But to me, I don't see the need for the piece about a consultant if we are asking these agencies to work with us and then to retain services to make sure that they can provide us with the best support. And then I would add AOE.
Let's stick a pin in this, and let's do some, let me do some work on Monday.
Can I just make a suggestion above?
Yes,
I think this could be 3 bullet points instead of 5. This might be me like dying on some grammatical hill, but exceptional opportunities for everyone isn't exceptional. That's not anything. So you might either cut that out or turn it into substantially equal and excellent educational opportunities in A, and cut B out, and then C, put in affordability and cut out E.
so you're saying combine A and B.
Yes, even though exceptional, you can't do that for everyone.
Well, actually, you can provide us exceptional opportunity.
For everyone,
Well-
then it's not exceptional. I'm not going to argue it more because I really don't care, but it doesn't make any sense.
What about just high quality?
Right, or excellent or something.
Oh, you see.
If everyone's exceptional, then everyone gets like a participation trophy. It's not a real thing.
I put that word because I wanted to make sure we were shooting for the highest bar we could possibly.
Okay.
shoot for.
If you like that word, you can have it.
Oh, I don't want to. Okay, well, let's just.
I just think you can make that 3, and there's.
So you're suggesting we figure out how to combine A and B.
Mm-mm. And C and E.
Can you work some magic around that one?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Moving on. Page 20.
I just wanted to put property wealth somewhere. Or 20 or 21.
You wanted to make it like good, but
A metric that they have to
like a teach.
include. Yeah.
HLP.
Mhm.
What are we actually saying?
Right. And it might come after D.
Is it, you were saying, is it property wealth tax capacity or what is it?
I think it's grand list value.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I like really don't have strong feelings about this, but if we have a 5-year facility condition index, do we also need a PCB testing score? That sounds like a lot of work
That
to,
would require a lot more PCBs. That's.
yeah.
I believe every school is required to do PCB testing right now. And so this would be collecting the scores that exist, which I think AOE already has.
Oh.
Along with the 5-year facility condition index score. I think those are 2 separate pieces of data. Whether you want them both is a policy choice.
I don't think E is necessary, frankly. I don't think that's gonna help us make better district boundary decisions.
That's, okay.
Are you doing away with subdivision E on page 21?
Yes.
I have January 31st on line 15.
So, yep. January 1st, 2025, and line 15 on page 21.
Do you want to keep 12 meetings?
No, I think we said yesterday that we just made it up at 20. So here we have the sum, which is a little bit of, let's put a pin in this as well. Which one? 22, page 22, the login.
We're on section 4 now. I think that line 14. If we add the words public and independent school, I think it's defeating the underlying purpose of that sentence, because from what I'm reading, the idea is that we would look at existing infrastructure that may not be education related for the purpose of making it education related. So if there's a large building that needs some modernization and remodeling, and be turned into a school, instead of having to build an entirely new structure, because the entire issue is the school infrastructure. You know what I mean?
Oh, you were reading this. That's interesting. That's an interesting read. You were reading it to say, when it said public infrastructure, you were reading that to mean not necessarily school infrastructure.
Well, that's what.
Which I hadn't read that way. Which is, I just hadn't thought of that.
Did it say existing public school infrastructure before or existing public infrastructure?
I see that's check.
Because I mean, if we're looking at the first line, it's the intent to encourage efficient use of public funds to modernize school infrastructure in line with current educational needs. So we have a line that addresses current infrastructure and modernizing it. And then further down, a line that kind of encourages creativity and looking at existing structures that may not be in use, that may also not currently be education related.
I don't even know if we need that sentence.
I'm just thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
You need that sentence.
Well, I think it is a good idea to look at existing buildings.
But that exists in 3 other sentences in that paragraph. Efficient use of public funds to modernize school infrastructure. Prioritizing cost, facility standards, capacity, and then to consolidation of buildings within a district where feasible.
I think it intended to all be school infrastructure that we were talking about. You read it, but you had an interesting read on it that is different.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, yes, I think we should be looking at modernizing existing infrastructure and also taking a step to look at existing structures that could be converted into schools.
Maybe we should make a separate sentence that, what if we left this sentence the way it is? Further is intended this chapter to encourage the use of existing public and Vermont-based, we wanted to say for both, for existing Vermont-based public and independent school infrastructure to meet the needs of all students. And we could add a sentence that actually is explicit. What you're thinking is also look at non-school infrastructure that might be incorporated into
Just public infrastructure.
public,
There's
other public infrastructure. I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I mean, I thought I may have misinterpreted it when I first read it, but I thought that was what the initial intention was with that line. But if it's necessary to add a line, then I think it's helpful in
I'm
some.
all about less words. And the sentence to me is either about public infrastructure or school infrastructure. Beyond that, you don't really need to say anything else.
I think that I had heard conversations about possibility of a district closing school. and repurposing it for the possibility of an annex for CTE. If CTE needed to expand, rather than taking the fiscal plan out of there, maybe find another purpose. So that's why I think.
Well, so, okay, so we've maybe had, but think about this. I think that what we're trying to add here is the concept of the commission also considering, or this chapter, statement of policy, to consider other public infrastructure that might be available to incorporate into a school infrastructure.
Yeah.
What did it say before?
Just existing infrastructure.
Yeah.
Okay, and to use it, that use. I honestly don't think that sentence needs to exist.
Well, the one thing it does is it does say to, remember where independent schools can provide part of the infrastructure. It does, that sentence does add that.
But it said existing infrastructure before,
Yeah.
which wasn't public or private or doesn't even matter,
We
honestly.
could just, encourage the use of existing infrastructure. Yeah, let's just go, we can just go with that. Like that,
I mean,
not just everything actually considers.
Yeah.
You could, and, I mean, it seems highly unnecessary to tell experts in retrofitting and design and real estate to do that, because there are plenty of times when it's just less costly to start over than to take an existing building and retrofit it.
Well, then, how about instead of encourage the use of existing infrastructure, consider the use of existing infrastructure?
That or you don't need this.
Can I just remind you all of where this language fits in?
Yes.
So this is a statement of policy for state aid school construction. So this is a policy about your use of public funds and the policies that you all make in funding school construction, not the people designing the projects.
It's the intent, so it's another chat, so it's echelon.
No, this is adding a section
Yeah.
to 16 VSA, chapter 123. It's the statement of policy for the whole chapter.
I personally think you could have the first sentence there and leave the rest out, because the rest is what the group is doing. The rest is figuring out how to make it cost effective, accessible, world class, at scale. That's what they're doing. I don't know. I wouldn't agree with the rest, because you don't know what the most cost effective world class option is.
So you're suggesting just keep the first sentence.
Yes. A lot of our infrastructure is very old.
I'm actually comfortable with that.
I mean, but I do think I need to react to old infrastructure. We're in old infrastructure right now, and it's serving the purpose because it's been kept modern and viable. That's just me. So it serves our purpose. But the point of the paragraph, I think first sentence is sufficient.
There is some, I mean, this is now, you could have this rabbit hole, but the middle school at Bennington was the last school built construction, state aid construction. It's a more modern building. It's designed differently. Has a different feel, more efficient. It's great. It's so maybe want to update and modernize or update or
I just don't know who those sentences are for. You know what I mean? Like if you're trying to get them to take all that other stuff into account, then that gives them enough direction. And if you're saying you need to do this and that, why? For who?
I would also just, again, whatever policy decisions you make, you have asked, this language asks the agency of education to engage in rulemaking. And one of the pieces, you should be providing direction to them about what that rulemaking should entail. And I believe that part of the purpose of the statement of policy is to provide some amount of policy directive within that rulemaking. So whatever you decide there, I would just encourage you to remember that whoever's doing the rulemaking is probably going to be looking at the statement of policy to guide them, or they should.
And that's why I feel strongly about taking it out, because I don't think if you want the first part, you should constrain it with the second part. I went through this in Burlington. Like, you don't want to be like, oh, but you really have to use the same high school. It's been a disaster. Which we're doing.
I'm actually comfortable taking it down. Okay, all right.
So starting on page 22, starting on line 13.
Line 9.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant 13. The two sentences.
You meant 13, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So we're keeping the first two sentences from line 7 to line 13.
Mhm.
Okay. Section 5. This we almost entirely or entirely, that remind me, is held is from the House passed version.
Yes. And the bill that is on the wall in Senate Finance.
Okay, all the way through the all of section 6, 5.
All of section 5. Except for page 29, line 13. That reporting requirement was added in the House.
But this all came over from the,
Yes.
okay, oh, I see. What you're
Yep.
referring to.
Yes, you haven't made any
Yeah,
changes
okay.
to this,
That's what I felt, okay.
all the way to page 37.
So that's all that. Which takes us, unless we'll have something to put up in the House language, to what, section 13? Right, on page 37.
Yes.
This is the section where we are adding language to actually reduce the semester tuition program or which schools are eligible to receive to 2 levels of being integral to the system. One is to have to be in non-operating SU as opposed to right now fully operating SD. So school can't be in one of those, and 2.5%. So this is the section that reduces choice.
I was gonna make a proposal on lines 12 through 14 on page 38. I'm okay with the rest, even though I don't know what a supervisory district is.
It's a single that also provides its own supervisory services, supervisory district. They tend to be larger, more kids.
I guess, do we need that going forward? Do we need to have a school district? We say school districts everywhere else.
Well, we have districts throughout Vermont. We have supervisory districts now. We have
Correct.
some that are not in an SU.
But are they needed in the future state?
Yes. But I think it's certainly something we want to have as an option.
Okay.
Because they're single bits that are big enough to have their own, provide their own services.
Okay.
Sometimes that's gonna make sense. I think we don't want to limit. That's just my thing.
Okay.
So.
Are there supervisory districts that do not operate a public school for some or all grades?
Supervisory districts, I believe, are fully operating. Is that, no, that's not.
That is certainly not a part of the definition, and I don't know the makeup of each SD
Yeah.
enough to know.
Okay. Fine.
So I know, Senator, so that you had something about, section 15,
Page 38.
yeah, 39, actually.
No, I was on page 38,
Oh, okay.
line 12. I would say within 25 mile. I mentioned I have.
Yeah.
That's just my thing. And I can keep Canada in, but 25 miles.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're talking about the entire province of Quebec, or the entire state of Massachusetts, or the entire state of New York.
25 miles, New Hampshire. Okay,
Okay with the intent, but I think we need to look at where our students go now, just to make sure we're not making a mistake that we intend to make.
And then, yeah, maybe sometimes I feel like you do have to really say what you mean. And if in New Hampshire we go further, I could accept that. I just think everywhere else it's a border question.
So I perfectly get it. Just want to make sure we don't step into it.
yeah.
Mhm.
So we'll put it in and then we'll double check. Okay,
Who's double checking?
well, not you.
Okay.
You don't have to.
Someone
Yeah,
listening to
well,
this.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well, I do know that that 25 miles has been looked at over time. So this is not the first time it's been discussed, so we can figure out how to get,
we just ask it.
fair reach and a sense of what's in or out. Yeah.
So, sorry.
And
We'll get back camera.
So like you could be said, 25 miles or reciprocal. Reciprocal is used somewhere in this, so. I'm just open to whatever, but I don't want it to be the entirety of all the states around us and the province of Quebec. I had a concern on page 39 now. It starts on page 39. I don't think graduation requirements are ready right now. We haven't seen even like a draft of them, to my knowledge. We know what EQS looks like. No one has shown us. I don't have a good sense of the graduation requirements that we'd be endorsing.
We're not.
This is requiring rulemaking to do that.
I think they could come back to us with a proposal before we authorize rulemaking. I don't want to set that process in motion. I don't want to set that process in motion. I don't think they've given enough
I
information.
actually will say that I agree with you. I think having them back with a report.
Who will come back with a report? Because you already have AOE coming back with a report on page 42. Wait, sorry, not 42. 16 on page 40, section 16. You just have the agency, this language has the Agency of Education recommending graduation requirements of the State Board of Education, you could build yourselves in there and have it be an official report back. And you could leave the rules update language, or you could take it out.
Yeah, I think what Senator Rosenthal is suggesting is take out the minutes,
Mhm.
updating, just have a.
Yeah, they can report to us and the Board of Education,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, it's a big work can be sent to AOE and the two committees.
Yeah. Or the reports from AOE to the board and to us or something.
So no rulemaking in any of that yellow.
Yeah, and I would take out V also,
Yeah,
it was small by necessity, I feel like that's necessary.
Okay, well, that's two different things, so let's make sure we're
Yeah, yeah,
one at a time. It's take out the initiation of rulemaking under section 15A1 and 2.
You want to take out 2?
Yes,
2 is updating the independent school rules to comply with law.
but I thought that was for the graduation.
No.
Okay,
Oh, subdivision 2 on line 16 is very specific. Ensure compliance with the requirements of 16 VSA 828 applicable to approved independent schools.
okay.
what 16 VSA?
What we just walked through on pages 37 through 39 related to
Oh,
in school educational programs the school district is allowed to pay tuition to.
okay, so that we need.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Then, Senator, we are on to line 11,
Mhm.
page 40.
I think we are looking at the foundation formula to say you can be small by whatever metric you want, but you might not get an additional weight for that, and then we don't need a report.
Can you say that one more time?
So part of the conversation we were having yesterday is if we build into the foundation formula that we're not telling you what class size you need to have. We're not telling we're telling you you get a weight if you are small because you're in a sparse area, not if you're just small. So we are limiting in the foundation formula more smallness as meriting more funds. And I think that's sufficient without coming back, and I don't know what we would do then if we've already made that decision in the foundation formula.
And you're saying that we're making the determination about small by necessity in this, and it connects to sparsity, small schools in sparse areas.
Right, and I just don't see this report back being useful, and just it seems like more stuff that we're asking for.
My attitude of this right now is that, strip the bookkeeping that we're going to get done. And if it's extraneous to that, I'm fine with letting it go.
So you'd like to strike on page 40, subsection B, lines 11 through 14.
Yeah, unless there's anybody else doing differently. Yes, Julian.
Just one consideration. It is a policy choice. The small school weight that we were talking about yesterday was a proxy using it in a sparse district because this rule was still outstanding, the small by necessity. So if the idea is for now the small school weight, the definition of the small school weight to be changed to be located in a sparse district with fewer than 55 persons, then there also need to be corresponding changes in the foundation formula to reflect, because as a change in the definition of small school than what we were talking about yesterday. This is a flag.
So you're saying, are you saying that, are you kind of saying that as we look at this over time, this could be useful information?
That depends on what you're trying to do and what your policy objective is. I'm just saying that the foundation formula small school weight that we have spoken about so far has always been in H 454 is passed by the House, the definition of the small school weight is small by necessity. And JFO has been modeling it as sparsity because that's what current law has, but that's a current funding, proposed funding change. Just a flag.
Can I recommend we hold it?
Yeah.
Put a big question mark
Yeah.
answer it.
Yep. I'm so, um,
I don't think we've gotten a better on small or sparse or the combination.
section 16, which is the graduation requirements.
So this language and this date came out of the House. The House has passed, or is this a change which happened in the House from the original bill? I just wondered if AOE is on board with the thing.
For my part, I would rather than take the process off here, I'd rather have the report come to us.
This section feels kind of unwieldy. There's a lot of things we're asking for. Or this section is asking for that also have language in other sections. So like we asked for a school construction task force, and then this says,
Look, I don't mean to stop you.
yeah, no, I don't know what I'm saying, but
Okay, let's look at section A first. So A, under 16.
We've just talked about A, and that I'm going to amend to have it be a report back to you all.
Okay, good.
So let's
Okay.
move on from that one.
Okay.
B, starting on page 41. Use this all and report back to you all. Subdivision 1 is a plan for statewide financial data and student information systems. 2 is the school construction language has the school construction program living within AOE. Subdivision 2 here is asking AOE to report back to you all how they're gonna essentially staff and run that division within AOE.
okay, I'm gonna check back with the other section.
Motion for then 3.
Sure.
3 is a progress report regarding the guidance AOE would give to the field regarding the business processes and transactions that would need to occur for school district mergers, including how collective bargaining agreements for both educators and staff should be handled. And then additionally, so there's the progress report of the development of that guidance. And then the report to you all would also need to include how the agency is going to provide support and consolidation assistance to the field. And an estimate of the costs associated with such work. And then on page 42, subdivision 4. Is a report back on the oversight of therapeutic schools.
Yep.
That's it.
Okay. Section 17. Senator, are we kind of going to see if you're thinking something was there?
I mean, I circled the therapeutic school piece because it feels kind of just thrown in here. And I don't know, like, I don't know if this is sort of well. If this could use, like, I don't think we've given enough attention to therapeutic schools. And so I'm just looking at it because there's another section on a special education strategic plan. And I don't know if these should both exist. I don't know.
Yeah.
Want recommended legislative language here, fine. It just feels redundant or confusing to me with the whole other section.
Do you have any insight on that?
It's a policy choice. Subdivision 4 was taken from H454 as introduced. I can offer no more insight other than that. I think that the special education section at the very end of the bill,
Yeah, it's kind of
I think I think it's a policy choice of whether this language needs to exist in different places.
it's in a section under graduation requirements. It seems not much as stuff.
Well,
I agree with Senator Long, Hinsdale, got its own section. Just make sure that the language covers the intent.
and the section is actually semicolon report. So, but many of the pieces of section 16 have nothing to do with graduation requirements, right? They're just a
Correct.
report.
Because subsection A, as it exists now, is asking the Agency of Education to recommend graduation requirements to the state board. Now, we're changing that to a report back to you all. So graduation requirements will be removed from the section heading. And this whole thing will be, this whole section 16 will be a report back to you all.
On many things.
Yeah, that's clear.
Yes.
I don't have to be the decider on this, but I don't think this section is valuable or as specific as what we're asking for in section 20.
Let's think about, let's assume we're gonna cross it out, not quite do it yet, until after we go through that section. Or move part of it, we need to move part of it. So let's remember that, page 42, sub 4, we'll come back to it then. So then we have this section which came out of the House, section 17. I don't think we touched it. Is that correct?
If there's no highlighting, you haven't touched it.
Yeah. This is that whole deal of the rules that should happen, I think. Okay. Then section 18.
This is the adult education payments.
Oh,
Or
this is where, okay, I will say that, and Meg is here, but I think the thinking is, the suggestion is to just eliminate this section because it is in the big bill. And, we're comfortable taking out of the theory that it's gonna stay in the big bill.
That is correct. Make
Okay.
post action so close that, yeah, we.
And I'm sorry, identify yourself for the record.
Make post action so close.
Okay.
Adult education, yeah, section 18, we feel you can strike it in its entirety. It is in the big bill and it's changing in the big bill, so we'd rather just focus.
So that, because otherwise it'll be conflicting language.
Exactly.
Okay, sold. That's in the entirety of yes.
Oh, and also section 19, it is also in the big bill.
Okay. So section 20, here we are now.
I would submit that section 20 and 21 both should be moved into section 16. as a unique reports or unique elements of the report from the AOE. Just to clean it up.
This is now a report section. Is there redundancy? What's being asked for in section 20 with that sub 4 that was that which would do.
I think you can probably take. Trying to keep your viewers up to date here. I think there's nothing in section 20 that talks about the need for cooperative education services. So I would suggest, if you're interested in keeping this concept at all, that you just ask me to go back and ensure that the concept from subdivision 4 on page 42 is reflected somewhere in section 20. And if you don't want to keep it, then tell me to strike it.
Don't see anyone want to strike it, so I think what you're suggesting would be helpful.
But I'm confused. Would we want to put those two things in the special education delivery report?
That is what I am suggesting.
Oh,
you
okay,
do.
okay,
She's going to look at it.
got it,
Words.
okay.
Yeah.
Is this buried in this language in section 20? Is it asking for a weight?
No.
Okay,
There's nothing to do with the foundation formula in section 20. The language from the House did. And so you don't see any highlighting because the changes were all removing language. So the House passed version asked for exactly the same information, but there were multiple places throughout section 20, 20, and 21 where there was a reference to an effort to move smoothly to a foundation formula or a weighted foundation amount for special education. All of those references have been removed from sections 20 and 21. If you find one that I have missed, I'll make sure that I remove it. That was certainly not, my understanding was we're not moving, the Senate is not moving towards a weight for special education. So this is simply a report back on information.
the Senate is not ever moving toward a weight? Okay,
Not now.
then wouldn't we want, so,
We're
okay.
sticking with the census.
Sticking with the Senate, yes, the block grant.
Yeah.
But the House, I'm just trying to make sure I understand, the House adopted the weighting considerations that Tammy Colby presented in our committee. So for different kinds of special needs, different weights.
I don't know what her presentation to your committee looked like, but yes,
Okay.
my understanding is that the House version
Mhm.
adopted the weights from Professor Colby's report. Yeah.
Okay. And we are not doing that this year. Do we want more information on the weights then for the future if we want to adopt weights? Okay,
Or, we don't know that we want to adopt weights, but I don't have, there's never any more information.
I agree with Senator Romney, so we need to look at that. That should be an element of this analysis. Otherwise, we talked about it yesterday in weights that how do we know if the numbers are right? How frequently do we review it? Here's an opportunity to review it, with subject matter experts.
I would ask you, so the weights that the House considered and that you all are considering, well, the weight in the House version were based on Professor Tammy Colby's report. This is just a request for data or information from the Agency of Education. So I cannot assure you that the Agency of Education could do the weighting analysis.
Let's let them say. If they can't. I'm okay tasking.
And I think they'll we kind of know they probably don't, they don't have that capability. So I think tasking on this perhaps.
okay, well, I'm not even, I just think someone needs to be tasked with something. To like, if we don't feel comfortable with the weights right now, what is going to make us feel comfortable? Is it how the implementation shifts the funding? Like, is it the impact of the weights that the House proposed? You know, I don't know what more information we want, but I think we need to have it by next year.
So we're currently in writing tasking them to address the factors contributing to the growth of extraordinary special education reimbursement costs. So, I mean, we've already addressed part of our intent. Again, just my perspective, when we have them validate, if they can't, I'm sure before we sign this bill, we vote this bill out, they're gonna come back and tell us what they can and can't do. This would just be valuable to know if that particular factor is appropriate.
So are you suggesting recommendations, with regard to weighting, special ed costs? Something that simple. Yeah, let's should put that in that simple. What's the task made up? So what the language is.
Okay. Do you want them to recommend weights?
No,
Then what would you like them to recommend?
no. It's kind of a recommendation. Go ahead.
Uh,
No, go ahead.
well, I'm just looking at 3 and 5 at the top of page 46. And if you're responding to the challenges of fully implementing Act 173, that's a categorical aid, that's a block grant. And if you're looking at 5, addressing drivers of growth, I feel like if, like, both of those are hinting at changing the payment model entirely.
And I'm gonna phone a friend if I can. My understanding is that even if you were to move to a weighted foundation amount, a weight for special education, that's not factoring in extraordinary reimbursement costs. That's above anything. The census block grant would be replaced by a weight. But in current law, it's census block grant and extraordinary reimbursement. And the weight would be weight and extraordinary reimbursement.
Oh,
Yes.
so what the House passed in 454 is a weight and then an extraordinary reimbursement.
They just didn't touch current law related
Right.
to extraordinary reimbursements.
That's okay, so we still need to, we're now silent on weight is the issue. So do we need anything to be ready to do weights?
Ready to rethink the starting point or what?
Yeah.
Doing,
They basically said, okay, we're gonna move to weights and then look at extraordinary expenditures. We're saying we're not gonna do weights, but we're gonna study extraordinary expenditures.
if we did nothing else, that's what that word.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So unless we wanna know more about weights, why are we choosing to do the categorical aid starting in 2028 or whatever that?
Things simpler and less disruption at this point.
Okay, are we gonna, we haven't looked at that section
Nothing to
yet.
prevent us from
Yeah,
looking at weights next year.
right. But do we need new information to do that next year?
I think we probably, I think wondering, you know, if we have the work that, get COVID did,
Mhm.
that we haven't had a chance to vet it. It hasn't been, you know, peer reviewed or whatever else. So we might have what we need to have a discussion next year already.
Okay. Okay. Let's put this on hold until we get to that part of the bill, because I did like the English learner weight differences, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's actually that's in the current language of our,
In our draft,
yeah,
okay,
weights.
okay.
But, minor, on page 45, line 18, maybe.
Yes, I've already made that note.
No, I get that one.
If you're just referring to the,
Plus.
Yep.
Yeah. Plus. And what did you do with, on page 46, we had we had that discussion.
no,
All sort of was conclusive, which is, yeah.
the only value I could see out of 4 is if we're asking for metrics of how to measure if special education is responsive to student needs. Ensuring special education is responsive to student needs feels like completely nothing to me.
So you're saying metrics,
If measurably, they would be measured.
mechanism for measuring whether special education is meeting student needs.
Yeah, because I'm
That's what
sure
I'm saying.
some programs are, it's like saying, all of education is meeting student
And
needs.
what do we mean by metrics in this? Is that what we mean? Is that the right terminology? Or they're just a mechanism to assure?
Honestly, I don't know what this section is trying to accomplish. But if it were trying to accomplish something, it would need to be more specific. Is it increasing in responsiveness? Is it responsive at all? Is it all special education? Is it students?
What we had talked about saying ensuring that the delivery of special education is meeting student needs.
Okay. I don't know what they would say. I just don't know what that means. Is there like a technical explanation for this one?
I think it was just taking a look at reporting about what they think it is and why.
I mean, we've heard 2 different philosophies about keeping students close to the classroom or giving them I don't know what we would get back from this.
So it's gonna bring. But then, besides the language,
Yeah.
Okay, so
we believe we know what we want, we just don't let us the question.
okay. So for now, we'll leave it as is, and it's a come back to the section, okay? I don't know, does anybody else have anything?
I mentioned that in the report.
Which-
I'm on page 46, the report about special education. Everything we have heard is it's a staffing issue. And nothing in here. Nothing in here says we need to know how to better staff
Our
special
schools,
education.
for special education, that'll be me.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think
line
line
3,
20 is trying to get at that.
On page,
46.
No, I just don't think I think it would completely miss giving us any value because we keep hearing that is the problem. Creating pipelines or something.
okay, so look at the precursor to that, to the
Mhm.
ABCD is the report shall include a geographic map with the location of all specialized programs within the state of Vermont, as well as the following information from each individualized specialized program. And I think that on my reading would work with.
So I don't know if I want to change that section, but then I look through the rest and I don't think anything set, that's the only thing that's a staff. Everything else on the next page talks about drivers of cost and barriers, but nothing says like where are we gonna get an analysis of why we're having staffing challenges and how to fix those staffing challenges.
You know, I'm looking, by the way, going back to that sub four on page 46, and this relates to what you're saying. It's kind of covered in one, improvement of delivery of special education services.
Yeah.
You could use 4 to say, ensuring that the delivery of special education is adequately staffed.
Ensuring adequate staffing to deliver special education that's responsive to student needs.
Yep. Ensuring adequate staffing. That's actually doing something. Okay. Good for this, for now. Okay. We'll have a meet for that on Tuesday. A couple of things to check on Monday. Additional work from JFO for Tuesday. And John will be here with some language of the company that work. So we'll have a chance to look at the second part of our task here. And Tuesday, if we can, we'll spend working to try to get this arranged through the other committee. We'll have you at one. And JFO followed by John, starting at something like 1. I realize that I have to get coordinated, and we'll work on that.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, of course.
So I just went back to page 38, in the tuitioning section. The piece, I just want to make sure I understand like what the House did versus, you know, what we're doing. In numbers subsection 6, it says an independent school, blah, 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 that complies with the reporting requirement. Do we need that language?
That's a policy choice.
What is
Uh,
that?
I think that was related to waiting, and I'll go back and look at that.
So what's the policy choice?
Oh, okay. It's
Here.
waiting, but it's not. It's fill up that look.
So they would have to live under the same weights as everybody else.
The same tuition dollars that school would get provide.
That language was about reporting data to AOE so that AOE could calculate student counts correctly under our current law. Off the top of my head right now, I can't guarantee you that this language is not necessary anymore, so I will go back and look at it.
Okay, so yeah, it's necessary to do the compliance, but.
Question based on what you just said, so are you saying that approved independent schools are getting the weights and the base?
They're getting the same amount that a student that would follow a student who doesn't school. So independent schools under this construct would no longer be setting tuition. In some instances, higher, some instances lower, they're just getting living with it and what everybody else is living with. That's the concept. That's what we're working on with the JFO. So let's just try to make it, live within the same. Okay, so I think we're good on this for today. I actually want to just stay here for a second if you can. I actually didn't have time to fully prepare for the discussion on 480 that we were sort of thinking to have. And I want to alert the committee to two things. I got a note, and I can't find it right now, but I'll get it to you over the weekend and to you. But I got a note from the agency expressing some concerns about adding the cardiac arrest thing section, both because of the sort of potential for it to be an unfunded mandate, and wanted to make sure that the policy involved comports with what's already happening. And I think that has had some concerns. And so I think they frankly are suggesting we don't do it this year. But I'll find that and get it to you for your something that I was looking for to open the can't look on. And I also have, with regard, remember the discussion about, so there's that. And we'll take that into consideration on 270, try to get it back to 480. I have a note, remember the discussion we had about, and this is in this, the discussion about funding of energy projects and the 20-year payback versus the 10, and whether we would allow districts to bond out for 20 years instead of 10. I have the note, I will also get this to you from the treasurer saying he sees no issue with it. I'll get you that, and we can incorporate that into the discussion. And then, do you have that language?
I know what you're talking about.
I think it's as simple
It's
as,
3448F, I believe.
and it's as simple as taking that language
Yes.
and changing it from 10.
Yes, and I think it's actually contracting, not bonding.
You're right. You're right.
The terms of a contract would be moved from 10 years to 20 years, not a bond.
Yes, okay. And so why don't we add that to 480
Okay.
for the next draft that we'll be looking at.
I just want to again flag for the record that if you have the treasurer's office come in, I do have a conflict with their office. I would prefer John shepherds that language if there's any back and forth. My husband is the general counsel.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We, however, I'll get the committee what the treasurer said, and we can decide whether we want to have the treasurer in. Or whether we want to touch this at all, then we may.
I think it's fine.
Okay, so we'll just look at it, and I'll get you that. I owe you and Will 2 sets of language that they have and emails. I just want to go word into that. And so we can put that on for Tuesday afternoon and try to do
480.
480.
Okay.
Yeah. Close that. And last, I have one thing. I did my interview with Senator Kempton. So switching gears here. So we're thank you.
Oh,
Thank you. And I did my interview with Senator Campion, and asked them the question we're supposed to ask, about why he wanted to go on to the state board. And he just talked about his passion for education, his years of service on this committee, and that he is really excited about the building on the work in here for like the last several years. So that's my report. And what we have to do to get that now on the calendar? Do we vote on this? Is it, give us yes?
I would do. Because I did my first, I don't. And then they both about it.
Have you seen it in the secretary? Isn't journalized, I don't recall.
Did you do them as a group?
Did you report here?
I don't remember. I talked to my person like the first 2 weeks.
Now I don't know if it was someone I know.
That's the latest of what I know.
Oh, yeah, so. So I talked to Joan Lennis really early in the session, and I don't know what happened after that, but she really enjoys being on the community. I recorded. And,
Where are you?
the yellow,
So we haven't voted her out of committee,
okay,
so that's. We can do it in conjunction with,
she's a wonderful person, yeah.
So if you want to do this, let's do it. Make a motion and then, we'll start with the chair.
He may not be on areas over there.
Brian Campion.
Yeah.
So, make a motion to approve Brian Campion from Bennington as a member of the State Board of Education. So move. And then opportunity for discussion. I need a sheet.
Does this one need to be discussed on the floor?
I don't think so.
So we know that what to approve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both the lines, around the lines, it's.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Brian Campion for State Board of Education.
I know he'd want me to say something to. But I can't think of anything funny right now, right after me.
We have a motion on the floor, right?
So. See, Senator Ron Henshaw,
Yeah.
Senator Hutchins,
Yes.
Senator Mulder,
Yes.
Senator Weeks,
Yes.
Senator Williams. Yes.
It's a vote.
5-0-0.
Well,
5-0-1.
0-1.
5-0-1. Excuse me.
Oh, 5-0.
And then, Will, do you have a copy of the nomination letter? If not,
Senator Williams does.
of the nomination letter.
Yeah.
Okay, then, so then you would take it back up to the Secretary of the Senate. That letter with an indicator of the vote, and then it gets journalized.
And you'll
Okay, is that-
you look at that.
I don't know where, I don't have any letter. I don't know.
Yes, Senator
Oh,
Williams
okay.
has the letter.
Whatever paper I had is gone.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. So that's the next step.
Yeah.
Now, if you're ready to report your nominee
Yes,
for the community high school of Vermont board. Do so.
okay, I mean, I could go find my text thread, but Joan Lennis is a former member of the House. Very active and involved. Was involved in education matters at Community High School of Vermont as a legislator and is really honored and looking forward to continuing her service. Good enough. I think she's been on it for a long time. So
I move for nomination.
we just raise our hand.
We need another sheet.
Who's it for?
Joan Lennis.
This one. Just.
Williams.
I've got nothing left. Ready to go.
But Will, do you still have Joan Lennis?
Senator Williams had the letters. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So, Wednesday.
Yeah,
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Senator Blumberg.
Yes.
Weeks.
Yes.
Senator Williams, yes. Senator Heflin. There's 5-0-1. Again.
So will I think the stem will be some further on Tuesday?
Sure.
Yeah.
Kind of thinking for the chair, what we're trying to do is wrap up these nominations. Everyone has the nominations that they've been assigned. Let's just wrap them up, do the short reports here. Just projecting.
can I ask one more question about, I think I can ask you on page 38, because I just want to make sure I understand what's happening here. The school in the bordering state, do they still have to be attending a school that's at least 25% district funded?
No, you don't have that there. I don't know if that was first, how, whether we get that information.
Okay, I would include that
I do could.
if
Yeah.
if we can, because I can understand like in Essex County or places where they happen to send a lot of their students over the border because they don't have enough school infrastructure in their community. But it was important to me that the percentage be guiding the decision, because otherwise we're starting to send people back to religious schools over the border, and someone could have a religious school right over the border. And
Okay, I think, for what this isn't fully answering your
Mhm.
your inquiry, but in part, I would say that when the Essex kids
Yeah,
tend to go to public schools. So it turns out that doesn't,
Right.
that's not dispositive.
Yeah.
It's just a,
right. So we could say a public school or independent school with 25%.
yeah, okay, let me circle that notion and see whether, I don't know if it's possible to get that information or not, but.
I would think if AOE keeps track of whose tuition and what school they're going to outside of the state, that would be relatively extractable.
Well,
information.
we would never have to be sending 25%, I don't think, of the total. Because I think it's sparse, there's just I think it's a relatively small amount that go across. And they go mostly to public school, and a handful go to independent schools across the river, especially in Massachusetts. I mean, I'm sorry, independent. I think in Massachusetts, I think. And again, I'm not sure I'm totally right about this, but the majority of the kids are from Greensboro and Stanford are going to public schools.
Right.
So I think we would never be supplying 25%. That's for sure.
Okay.
And what I don't know whether it's possible to.
Okay. What I didn't intend to do is say that we could send them to all the little independent schools all over around the border. That there would be some guidelines there.
Okay. Noted. Take a look. Oh, I have one more to do, by the way. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that.
No, that's it. That's it.
I can do my library person.
I didn't read something with me.
Oh, some friends with Shirley Jackson.
I don't know how to pronounce their last name. Linda, from Weston. She loves being on the board. Let's say that much. She's been on the board. She loves being on the board.
They'll have their own.
Yeah, she's number 2 under board of libraries. Upper left. Upper left. Second one down.
Oh, okay.
She was clear to me when I was talking to her that she really understood the job. Would it definitely be red letter?
Okay, so,
Oh, you know how to pronounce it?
Me?
No.
Oh,
all right, wait, wait.
oh, right, that's his football. I was like, no, I don't.
Yes,
Mr. Altoona.
Yes.
Senator Blumberg.
Yes.
That's.
I guess, yes. So, excellent. Five zero one. Good. Thank you.
So again, just to reiterate, the Secretary of the Senate's office is pretty fastidious. The reporter needs to bring the sheet back out.
You won't be today.
We will have it. We'll communication. No, so they'll probably be gone. Then she came to see if we had anything. I told her no. So, we have something.
Yes, for the record, Oliver Olson on behalf of the Vermont Independent Schools Association. The discussion of the nomination of the former representative from Shelburne to the Community High School of Vermont sort of triggered something in my brain. Fun fact, the Community High School of Vermont is actually an independent school. And given a lot of some of the recent legislative action and rulemaking governing independent schools, it occurred to me that it might be helpful to include them in the definition of a therapeutic school. It may just be a more appropriate place, given the nature of the students that they serve, because otherwise you fall under the rules governing students who are publicly funded, which pulls in a lot of requirements around admission requirements and things like that. And just given the nature of students, I'm not sure that those things would make sense.
So have they applied as a therapeutic school?
No, they're technically but there's a definition in statute which has been amended by the House that broadens the scope a little bit. They're an independent school under the rules, so it just may be something you may want to look into, because I think they may be inadvertently tripped up by some of the new rules governing general and independent schools. They're clearly a different sort of entity.
Okay. I'll get prepared. I'll get prepared for discussion on 480. We're gonna have Beth back in first thing on Tuesday, and then we'll have Julia and Ezra, and then we'll have John. This thing. So we're doing that. Okay. And by the way, I did mention to a couple of you, one thing that we're working on is to, you can see this on Tuesday with the work today is to work in a smoothing mechanism for the changes, so nothing too fast in either direction. All added to the slope in either direction, rather than something immediately.
What topic?
Oh, the foundation for the implementation of the foundation. Just as something for us to take.